stuff. Like, I love a lot of things about youth ministry, but there is something about ministry in general that I truly love, and it's a little bit in every area of everything that we do, and it's this idea of influence. All right, everybody say influence. It's this idea that, like, God has created you to be someone who will kind of be an agent of change in your community, in your family. And I love this idea because I think as students, oftentimes, you guys may feel like, no, I'm just a freshman. I'm just kind of getting through high school. But I don't think that's the case. I think that God has called you to be someone who compels other people about the gospel, about truth. And so I love this idea of influence. And so we're going to spend the next few weeks in a series called Influencers, all right? And so I'm really pumped. I've been talking to Alex for like 3 months about this series. Like I was like writing through Jonah, but I was like, this is the one that I really want to do. So hopefully you guys are as passionate about it as I am. If not, don't tell me. All right, thank you. All right, so we are going to go through this series called Influencers. All right, can somebody tell me what is an influencer? In like today's modern terms, what would we call, what is an influencer? Who's an influencer? Yeah, they got the blue check mark on the gram. A public figure, all right? What else would you call an influencer? Public figure, blue check mark, anything else? Celebrity, yeah. How do you know if somebody's an influencer or not? What's like the bar, the standard? Idiot decisions on the internet. Yeah, all right, yeah. They do something that makes them famous. Like how many followers do you have to be an influencer? 30K? 30K is not that much. Yeah. I mean, I'm like 20. No, I'm just kidding. Like 100K. All right, so he says 30K. Anybody want to challenge that? You got to have at least. She said 1 million. Yeah, she said 1 million. 1 million's a lot of followers, all right? Yeah, so I mean, these are people that we call in our world. We've come up with this term influencers, and we call them that because they do what? Influence. Yeah, they influence culture. They influence things that we do, decisions we make, places that we eat, all that kind of. They're influencers. It's just what they do. And so we are going to talk about that a little bit over the next few weeks. What is an influencer? How are we being influenced? Like when we look at what we would call influencers online or wherever, or things that we do, our sports team, how are we being influenced by those things or by other people? Because I think the Bible has called us as Christians to be people of influence, to be people who are an agent of change in our community, in our world, in your family, to be people who compel and convince other people of truth. And I think that's a command from us. I looked at the Great Commission and it said, go out into all nations. Like, that is what Christ has called us to do. Now, we might not have a blue check mark. We might not have 30,000 or 1 million followers, but nonetheless, in our realm of control, I think God has called us to be people of influence. And so for the next few weeks, I want to challenge you to embrace a lifestyle of influence, all right? Now, I'm not saying to go out and like buy a yacht and spend $100,000 on a bottle of champagne. Like, I'm not saying to do that, but like embrace this lifestyle that God has called you to be an agent of change, to be someone who influences the people around you, to influence, to go out, to advance God's kingdom. Like, embrace that as a lifestyle, something that you can do. Do you guys want to know more about influence, about how to embrace that? All right, thanks. If you said no, we're going to end of the night really quick. All right. Here's the reality, though. Before we can figure out how we influence other people or how we can be an influencer, we have to realize and we have to determine and figure out what is it that influences us. Like, what are the things that make us do the things we do or think about the things that we think about? What is it that makes us kind of have the life that we have and make the decisions that we make? How are we being influenced? Think about it this way. You guys know that I am a huge fan of a few things, and one of them is the greatest chicken establishment in the world, and it is... Shut your mouth, all right? It is Chick-fil-A, all right? Get behind me, Satan, all right? It is Chick-fil-A, all right? You guys know that I am a fanatic of Chick-fil-A. I spend my money there. I spend my time there. My kids, that's the only fast food restaurant they know how to say out loud. Like, I love Chick-fil-A. And Chick-fil-A doesn't need my help. They are already the best chicken establishment. But I help them out by constantly talking about Chick-fil-A. If we ever have the opportunity, I buy you guys Chick-fil-A, and we have it here, but they're closed on Sunday because they honor the Lord, all right? And so anyways, you guys know that I love Chick-fil-A. And by me talking about Chick-fil-A and telling you guys about Chick-fil-A and convincing you guys of the truth, which is Chick-fil-A is the greatest restaurant in the world, I am influencing you by that. Would you agree? Now, some of you don't listen to me. You're sitting back there and you're texting on your cell phone, all right? You haven't listened, and so you're not being influenced. They're over there in Wonderland, all right? But when I'm influencing you, I'm trying to convince you of the truth, all right? And when I do that, when your friends are hanging out and they're like, hey, yo, Cole, where are we going to go eat today? Cole says, you know what? My youth pastor says that we should go to Chick-fil-A. We should go to Chick-fil-A. You guys want to go to Chick-fil-A? And then Cole automatically earns status points because all of his friends are like, this guy is the wisest man on earth. And so then they all go to Chick-fil-A. This idea that I am influencing you, hopefully of a lot more things than just Chick-fil-A, and then therefore you go out and you talk to people about where the best restaurant is, and maybe you've learned the truth, which is Chick-fil-A is the best, all right? Obviously, hopefully, I'm dancing around this idea that hopefully I teach you a lot more about life than just Chick-fil-A, but that is a very important aspect, right? Now listen, you may not think that the things that you listen to or the things that you watch on Netflix or your Spotify playlist influence you, but they do. They influence us. They numb us to the ideas of profanity and sex and drugs when we watch shows like that, when we listen to music like that. You might not think that your friends or your sports team influence you, but they do. They determine the places that you do like to eat, the places that you hang out, the things that you say, the relationships that you pursue. You might not think that the app that you click on and watch porn influences you, but it does. It affects the way that you look at people. It affects the way that you pursue relationships. It affects the way that your mind works. All of these things influence us. Whatever we take in, whatever we are watching and listening to, whatever we are hanging around, the places that we go, the things that we do, they all have an impact of influence on our life. They do. It's just by default. Even if you were to say, Alan, I sit in my mom's basement and I listen to nothing, I don't watch anything, I'm just by myself, nobody influences me. I am the only one who influences myself. You have therefore answered the idea. You are still influencing yourself. You have decided that the decisions I make are not based on what social media tells me or what this movie tells me or what my friends tell me. It's simply based on what I tell myself. By default, all of us are being influenced in some way. And so we have to figure out, what is it that influences us? Because once we figure that out, we will determine how we are influencing other people, all right? And there's a Bible story about this. It's like cut and dry, man. I love it. When I was thinking through this series, I was like, man, remember that story about Abram and Lot. So we're going to look at this story today from Genesis chapter 13. Look at what it says. It says, so Abram went up from Egypt, he and his wife, and all that he had, and Lot. So I'm going to go and give you a heads up. Lot is Abram's nephew, all right? They went into the Negeb. Now, Abram was very rich in livestock and silver and gold. He was rolling in it. He probably had a check mark beside his profile. And he journeyed on from the Negeb as far as Bethel to the place where his tent had been at the beginning. Everybody say beginning. Between Bethel and Ai, to the place where he had made an altar at the first. And there Abram called upon the name of the Lord. So here we call him Abram, but later on God changes his name to what? Abraham. Maybe you've heard some stories about this old dude in the Old Testament called Abraham. He's actually the father of the Hebrew nation. He's kind of like where the Israelites came from. He kind of made a covenant with God, and that's kind of where all the lineage kind of came from. And so he's kind of this big picture character from the Old Testament. And so Abram, what he does, he takes all of his stuff and he moves it back to Bethel, this place where he had started. If you read through the Old Testament, this place of Bethel is actually kind of a hot topic place. A lot of times people pass through there. It's like a landmark. And so he goes back to this prominent place where he had made an altar before. And what does it says he do? And there, Abram what? Called upon the name of the Lord. So Abram here, he's got all of his family. He's got all of his nephews and all that. He's got all of his livestock, all of his stuff. and he's there, and he says, hey, I'm the patriarch of this clan right now, and I want to make an example. I want to influence the people around me. So he makes an altar. He calls out to God. He's doing his best to set an example of this is how life should be. This is how I want to influence the people around me. So Abram does that. He says, we're going to be dependent on Yahweh. So then it says, and Lot, who went with Abram, also had flocks and herds and tents, so that the land could not support both of them dwelling together. For their possessions were so great that they could not dwell together, and there was strife between the herdsmen of Abram's livestock and the herdsmen of Lot's livestock. At that time, the Canaanites and the Perizzites were dwelling in the land. They had so much stuff, like they literally couldn't live together because their workers and their sheep were all getting mixed up, and it was just a mess. So they say, hey, we're not going to be able to live together. And so they had to decide, we're going to kind of draw a line in the sand and say we're going to split up and go our own ways. Look at what it says. And Abram said to Lot, let there be no strife between you and me and between your herdsmen and my herdsmen, for we are kinsmen. We are like brothers. We are family. Is not the whole land before you? Separate yourself from me. If you take the left hand, then I will go to the right. If you take the right hand, I will go to the left. So Abraham here, he kind of like takes the stance of like, all right, I'm going to give Lot the pick, the choice. He's going to have the choice so that I don't want to kind of overarch on him and make him go here or make him go there. I'm going to take the humble, the high road, you might say, and say, I'm going to let Lot choose. And so that's what Abram does for Lot. He gave Lot the pick of the crop. All right, let's see what Lot does. It says, and Lot lifted up his eyes and saw that the Jordan Valley was well watered everywhere, like the garden of the Lord, like the land of Egypt in the direction of Zoar. So Lot chose for himself all of the Jordan Valley, and Lot journeyed east. All right, so there's an important concept here. So Lot looked up, he lifted his eyes, and he looked over the land, and he was like, man, that is beautiful. That is like the best looking land. I want the best. It's beautiful. It's breathtaking. And so Lot goes after the thing that is beautiful. All right? Can I give you some advice? Just because things are beautiful does not mean they are the best thing or the right thing or the best thing for us to do. Like Lot chose his fate on the appearance of the land. He didn't quite think about, well, who would I be neighboring up against? What kind of trouble might I get into if I go that way? What kind of problems will this bring about for me? I thought about this in the realm of relationships. Do you guys want some relationship advice tonight? All right. Ryan said he wants some relationship advice. Just kidding. Listen, oftentimes we let our eyes dictate our actions. Like ladies, you might have the guy in your mind's eye, and you're like, man, that guy is scrumptious. That guy is good looking. He's a smooth talker. Man, he says all the right things. He buys me Starbucks. That guy is a looker, all right? Yeah, all right? That guy, he is just beautiful. Guys, you might have that lady you're thinking about, right? And you're like, man, have you seen how many likes on Instagram she has? That girl is fine, right? That girl is a looker. Everybody knows how beautiful that girl is, right? Just because it's beautiful does not mean it's the best thing. Does not mean it's worth pursuing. Does not mean it's worth chasing after. You want some real relationship advice? Instead of thinking about how many likes or how many people are sliding in those DMs, think about character. Think about, man, I'm not even talking about Lot and Canaan anymore, but think about, you want to know how someone will treat you when it's time for marriage? You should look at how they treat their parents. Look at how a girl talks to her dad and respects her dad and honors the rules and the authority of her dad. Guys, think about when you're looking at that guy, think about how he talks about his parents. Think about and consider how he responds in conflict. Like when things get really crappy, is he somebody who blows up and gets all flustered about everything? Or is he somebody kind of, you know what, it's going to be okay. I'm going to trust in the Lord. Man, think about how quick that person is to forgive. Like when things are really bad, somebody does them wrong, do they give them the middle finger or do they say, you know what, I'm going to forgive them, it's fine? Like when Lot chose the land, all he thought about was the beauty. All he thought about was how good it looked and how much fun he might have. And I think oftentimes so much of our relationships are right down that alley. How beautiful are they? How good looking are they? How will this help me in my game? Instead of, what kind of character does that person have? And oftentimes you can't find that through an Instagram profile. You can barely find that in a solid relationship. That takes time and that takes effort. All right, I'm done with relationship advice. We're going to go back to Lot and Abram, all right? All right, so it says Lot chose the Jordan Valley and he journeyed east. Let's look at what Lot does. It says, thus they separated from each other. Abram settled in the land of Canaan. That's an important place too if you ever read the Old Testament. While Lot settled among the cities of the valley. All right, here's where it gets really problematic for Lot, all right? Look at what it says about the cities of the valley. And Lot moved his tent as far as Sodom. Now the men of Sodom were wicked and great sinners against the Lord. Everyone say, this doesn't look very good. I remember in high school, I was a freshman in high school, I remember saying that phrase to myself, this doesn't look very good. This is not going to work out for me. I went to a really small Christian high school where we didn't have a ton of students. I think our high school was about 60 kids, so compare that to Stowe. How many got at Stowe High School? Yeah, like 2,000 kids. All right, that's ridiculous. So there's like 60 kids in my high school. And as a freshman guy, I decided I wanted to play a prank on one of the senior girls, all right? I was an idiot, okay? And when I was in school, back in my day, boys, we weren't allowed to have cell phones. I know that seems like ages ago. I'm not that old. I guess it was like 10 years ago. But anyways, we weren't allowed to have cell phones. How the times have changed. Could you imagine if they told you couldn't have cell phones in school today? All right, nice. All right, anyway, so we couldn't have cell phones. And so we were doing this thing outside where we're doing like a science experiment. I have no idea what the science experiment was. But all I know is one of the senior girls, her phone fell out of her pocket. And I was like, oh, yeah, we got it. She's going to get in trouble. She's not supposed to have her phone. And so we snatched her phone, and we pocketed it. And we never had the intention of stealing the phone. That was never the intention. We were just playing a prank. We were being stupid freshman guys. And so we hung on to the phone. We passed it back and forth between a few people. It was funny. You could see her panicking. Oh, my gosh, am I going to get in trouble? Then our principal came upstairs. Our high school was in the upstairs of our school. And she came upstairs, and she told us about how stealing was wrong and about how you shouldn't do that. And I'm over here just like, isn't she supposed to be in trouble? She had her phone at school. What is this? And then the principal figured out that it was either me or another person who had the phone, all right? And this is when I said, this isn't looking very good right now, all right? And they told me that if I didn't either give up the phone or give up the person who had the phone, that I was going to be suspended from school. And that was my only option. I either give up the phone, give up the person, or call my mom to come get me, and I get a week's of suspension, all right? I was like, oh, dang. And I was like, at this point, nobody even had the phone. We had threw it in the back of the classroom, and we're like, somebody will find it, and it'll be a funny joke. Ha, ha, ha. Nobody found it. And so I had to go. I told the principal, hey, it was a prank. I acted alone. None of my friends did this because I'm an idiot. And I just took the blame on my own. Never ratted out my friends. But anyways, I had to go into that room. Yes, right. No, this is not, do not clap for me right now. I had to go into that room, which just ironically happened to be the classroom that the senior class was in. And I had to go into the room and pick up the phone from the back of the room, it's kind of under some jackets, and take it to the senior girl, and I had to apologize for stealing her phone, all right? No, stop clapping for me, all right? This was the low point of my high school career. No, I had a lot worse things than this. And I just remember coming out of that, what in the world influenced me or compelled me to do something so stupid? We had this point system where if you got so many points, you got in trouble. They're called demerits. I got a ton of them. I had to work 5 weeks to get the demerits to come down. I mean, I was in a mess. And I was like, why would I do something so stupid and get caught up in lies and trickery? And, I thought it was all just something funny. I was like, I'm an idiot. And as I think about that scenario in high school, and I think about the poor choices I make today and everything in between, man, I try to grasp my head around what is it that influences me, that affects me to make the decisions that I make, to do the things that I do. And there are a few things that come up, I feel like, over and over again as I go through those moments. The first one is this, and we've talked about it a little bit, is that we have to recognize what influences us, all right? How many of you guys have ever heard of a DUI? A DUI? What is a DUI? Somebody tell me. Driving under the influence, right? My brother, he's had a long battle with alcohol, has gotten pulled over and arrested for a couple DUIs. I don't think he would mind me sharing that. Sam, hope you're not watching. My stepdad, growing up, was like a raging alcoholic. I can actually remember times growing up in grade school where my stepdad would literally have a beer in a brown bag, drinking it while we were like going down the highway. Luckily, I'm here today. But like DUI is this whole idea of like, so you're under the influence of something. And in that case, for my brother, he was driving under the influence. The influence of what? Alcohol. Typically, it's alcohol. It could be drugs or whatever. But under the influence of alcohol. And when somebody is under the influence of alcohol, how many of you guys ever seen somebody just blatantly drunk? When they're under the influence of alcohol, the things that they say, the things that they do, the things that come out of their mouth, are they something that person would typically say or do? No, they're like being controlled by alcohol. And for all of us, we are under the influence of something. There is something in our life that is controlling us. The way that we think, the way that we say things, the way that we do things is all because there's something that influences us to do the things that we do. Now, obviously, when we see somebody who's drunk, it's like really easy. Like, that dude's an idiot. He is drunk. Like, he's obviously under the influence of alcohol. But when you see somebody on your sports team or at your school just like full of anger and rage, do you say, man, that person's under the influence of, like, we can't pinpoint it. They're under the influence of something, but we don't know what it is. And I think in our own lives, we can be under the influence. Something is controlling us to do that, but we can't quite pinpoint it sometimes. So we have to try and recognize, what is it that influences? Is it our friends? Is it our social media? Is it a particular person in our life? Is it porn? Is it our like obsession with food? Is it our hobby? Is it our sport? I don't know. But there are things in our life that influence us, and we have to try and pinpoint and figure out what it is. And once we figure out what it is that controls us, we recognize what influences us, we have to guard what we allow. We have to guard what we allow to influence us. Now, there's kind of a step in between this, is that, do you really care? Like there are things that influence and control us, and some of us might be like, you know what? I'm kind of cool with like that controlling me. With like my friends and peer pressure pushing me to make these decisions, I'm actually okay with that. And if you're there, like probably not going to get to number 2. But if you're at a point where you're like, you know what? I kind of hate that I think like that. I kind of don't want to act like that when things get tough. I don't want to be controlled by this or that. Then that's when you hit step 2. You start to guard what we allow to influence us. All right, I want you to close your eyes. Everybody close your eyes. Close your eyes, open your mind. All right, your eyes are still closed, but you're opening your mind. What do you think it is that controls you? Don't answer out loud. This is just for you. What do you want to be controlled by, if anything? Just think about that for a moment. What is it that controls you, and what is it that you want to be controlled by? I want you to be honest with yourself. All right, you can open your eyes. How you answer that question, like, determines a lot about kind of your course of life and, like, what maybe the next step is for you. Like, if you are thinking, you know what, I'm okay with my friends or my, all these things controlling me that I mentioned tonight. Maybe you're like, I don't want anything to control me. I kind of like controlling myself. I want to be, that kind of controller of my life. Maybe you're like, you know what? There's like a source of truth, something that will never change, something that's consistent, something that will always be there for me. I want that to control my life. So once we have figured out what influences us, we're starting to guard what we allow to influence us. At times, no matter how much we guard it, like it's still there. It's still kind of blatantly ruling our lives. And so at some point, it says we have to know when to turn around, when to get rid of whatever that is controlling us, to cut all ties with it. The Bible talks about being in the world, but not of it. Like we are not supposed to be controlled by our environment. We're not supposed to be controlled by our circumstances. We're not supposed to be influenced primarily by things like social media or what we see on the internet or our sports team, our significant other. And so at some point we have to decide, I'm done being influenced by all of these things. I'm done being controlled by things that are not consistent, that are not faithful to me, that are not real, that are not true. I don't want to be. I don't want to be controlled by those things. I don't want to be negatively influenced by those things. Now listen, there at all points of life, there will be minor things that influence you. You know what, like a little bit here, a little bit there. What I'm trying to get at is there are times when it is like the only thing that are influencing us has nothing to do with God and everything to do with the world. And that's where we have to draw a line and say, you know what? The primary influence in my life is not going to be social media, is not going to be people with blue check marks by their names, is not going to be people on the internet. It's going to be something that is true, something that is fundamental to life, something that is consistent and faithful. Because I think, point 4 is that you have to be influenced. We said it earlier. We are all being influenced in some way, shape, or form, whether we want to or not. And what I want you to realize is that we have to be influenced by God. All right? And that's kind of, you're like, okay, Alan, you just gave me like a really broad idea, like to be influenced by God. We just came out of one of the best series of this school year called Habits of Grace, in which Alex and Austin gave you 4 ways to be influenced by God, all right? What was the first one? Read your dang Bible, okay? That's the first and most primary way to be influenced by God, is to read His Word, to spend a quiet time with God every day, as much as you can, to be consistent in that. Like if we compare, how much time have I spent on my Bible and how much time have I got on screen time today? Do we even want to compare those two things, right? I know that I don't. And so when we look at that, what is the thing that I'm spending more time on? God and His Word or Instagram? You know, like when we compare those things, it is catastrophic. I know for myself it would be that way. Being influenced by God means spending some time in the Word. It means praying. When things get really tough, prayer is like the thing that you turn to. You're not Googling, what is it that I'm sick, WebMD. You know, you're not posting on Instagram, hey, I got this weird fungus on my foot. You probably wouldn't post that on Instagram, but it would be really funny if you did. Like you're not, you're praying on when things get tough. Like that is your gut reaction, is to pray, to be influenced by God in that way, to fellowship with other Christians, to go out and serve with other Christians, to serve your church. Those are ways to be influenced by God. All right, I didn't feel like I needed to go through those again because you just heard them. You just heard them. Like, influenced, we're going to be. We have to be influenced. It's just our human nature. And the result is that we need to be influenced by God. See, when Lot was standing there, he's looking over the beautiful land. He's looking towards Sodom. I don't even think that Lot, in that moment, made that decision. I think that Lot had already, in his mind, figured out, hey, if I get the chance, I'm not gonna keep following what Abram had taught me. I've already got my own plan to kind of get out of here. Because we look, man, Abram was literally the guy that God chose to start His people. Like that's what God chose Abram to do. Like if you want to call him like a superhero of the Old Testament, like he wasn't perfect, he messed up, but like he was literally Abraham. And Lot lived with him. Lot saw him make altars and to pray. Like he had a perfect role model to look to. And Lot instead chose kind of a different path. And I think he had to maybe think beforehand, Man, am I letting Abram influence me? Is this the lifestyle that I'm going to continue when I'm out of here? Maybe some of you are like that in your homes right now. You're like, you know what? Mom and dad are trying to get me to go this way, but man, as soon as I hit 18, as soon as I get off to a college campus, I am out of here. I am not following the way that my parents. For some of you, that actually might be a good thing. I don't know all of your parents. Some of your parents might be like mine growing up. Like my stepdad was a straight up alcoholic drug addict. I do not want to follow the steps of my stepdad, right? But if you have parents who are biblically grounded, who are trying to teach you ways that are right, and all you constantly do is rebel against them, like that's kind of what Lot's doing here. You know, when he had the chance to get out on his own to make his own decisions, he did not choose the right thing. And I know some of you are like, Alan, he just like moved to a different place near Sodom. Like it's not even that bad. Do you want to know what Lot's life ended up like? Do you want to know? It's pretty gruesome, actually. I'm gonna keep the cliff notes. Lot actually was in this scenario where there were these guys outside of his house threatening to like beat him up, basically. And he offers them his 2 daughters who had never been married before to have sex with these guys who are going to beat him up if they would leave him alone. Yeah, yikes is the right word. Sodom ends up going and hiding in a cave and committing incest with his daughters, in which the 2 nations that came out of that were some of Israel's biggest opponents. Like, bro, that is what Lot's life ended up being. And we might look at it and say, it was just one bad choice, Alan. He wanted to go over and live by Sodom. This says the men of Sodom were wicked sinners against God. And when we associate ourselves with people like that, we let people influence us so strongly in that way. And we say, you know what, I'm gonna rebel against the ways of God. Man, that is what our life can end up turning into, is just a mess. A mess. Like reading Lot's story in the following chapters after 13 is tragic. It is. And so my hope for you guys is that we don't let everything else influence us and put God away. That we allow God to influence us through his word, through prayer, through fellowship, through being at church and serving, through going into our community and finding Christians to be able to be around. Like I hope that we allow God to influence us in that way. That we can kind of stick to that and not make some of the similar choices that Lot did. I'm going to go ahead, let's see. I think when we do that, when we begin to let God influence us more than social media or more than things in our life, our friends, our family, our sports team, whatever. I've tried to give a broad idea. Maybe what influences you the most we haven't talked about. When we let God start influencing us, our life really will change. Like the decisions we make, the things that we think about, the things that we want to do in life will change. They'll begin to kind of adapt to be more like what God has called us to be. So listen, I know that like I can't throw out every scenario or everything, but I know that if you guys sit around in a circle, you might be able to toss some ideas around and maybe back this up a little more. So I'm going to give. All right. I hear some good conversations still going. I hate to cut you guys off, but we are going to move on through the next part of the night. So I'm actually going to go ahead and invite the band to go ahead and come back up. And for everybody else, you can go ahead and make your way back to the middle of the room. You know, as I was sitting here thinking about this, a thought came to mind. I think that there are probably how many of you would say that there are areas of your life that you want to change, that you want to be different? Like I'm a little chubby. Like there are a lot of times that I think, man, I wish I didn't weigh so much. And you're like, but Alan, you can work out and eat better. And I'm like, you're right. I have control of that, you know? When I think of this area of influence, how are we being influenced? This is literally, you have the opportunity to change that for yourself. If you don't like the way that social media influences you to do things or to spend all of your time on Instagram or to dress a certain whatever, you can literally delete the app. Yeah, like if you don't like the way that your peers influence you in a negative way, you don't have to be their friends. Like you can control these things. Just something I thought about. And I hope we can kind of open that up a little more over the next few weeks. Another thing that is kind of a Christian thing, it's theologically, biblically correct, thing that we would say is we use this phrase, King Jesus. How many of you guys have ever heard this phrase? I actually had them play, Kanye wrote an album called Jesus is King. So like, we use this phrase all the time, but like we kind of toss it around. What does it mean? In the area of influence, it literally means that Jesus is our king. Yeah. He literally sits on the throne of our life, and we don't make decisions on our own. We don't make decisions because it's what we want to do. We don't make decisions because it's what, like I heard this week, that skinny jeans are going out. Like, what is that? Gen Z, they said Gen Z determined that there's no more skinny jeans. I don't quite wear skinny jeans, but like, bro, skinny jeans are awesome. Like, they don't determine like what I think is right or wrong. Jesus is the king. He makes the laws, he makes the rules, he makes the ideas about what it is in my life that is right and is wrong. Not social media, not my friends, not that website, whatever. It's Jesus is king. And we sang a song this morning, and Ryan's actually going to sing the chorus for us in a minute. A song we sang this morning, and it says, "All hail King Jesus." And so tonight, Ryan's going to lead us in just the chorus of that song. And if that's something you want to proclaim, you want to lift your hands and say, you know what? I'm tired of being influenced by all the negative things of the world. I want Jesus to sit as king on the throne of my life. I want to encourage you to sing that. So Ryan, I'm going to go ahead and let you sing the chorus of that song for us.